Phobos here, coming at you with a WoW video. This is going to be basically a VOD review of the Jaina Proudmore fight on heroic difficulty. It's going to be from a BM Hunter perspective, and just going to be showing you how to do the fight, what to watch out for, basically how to maximize your damage. I feel like this pull, if it's the one I'm thinking of, showed that off quite well. I think this was a rank 67 parse on Jaina. So it was like 99th percentile, pretty high. A lot of your damage on this fight is going to come from a bit of RNG in the sense of it's going to be like, when are you getting blocked? When are you being broken out? How many people are being blocked when your cooldowns are up? Obviously, you can play around that to an extent, but if your guild is giving you like a specific job, then it's probably best that you do that job and not really worry about parsing for this one, as it can be quite RNG. So I'm just gonna go through the fight and pick out notable things. When I first did one of these, it was like 40 some minutes, so I think I'm gonna try and do another one and get it down a little bit. But go into the fight here. I'm just gonna pause and like as I deem necessary. I'm gonna start with the sound on, and then kind of go from there. If the sound becomes too much, we'll remove it. But so on the pull for this fight, just something to keep in mind is it's all going to be about whether you're either mind controlling the guards off the bat or if you're going to keep them up. Now, some people like to keep them up because there are some classes that gain a single target damage benefit from basically dotting up the guards or something like that, because they'll get extra procs that they can use on single target. Hunter is not really like that. As a hunter, you're basically going to be padding on here. If the guards are left up. Theoretically, that's not the right thing to do because it's taking damage away from your classes that are like dotting for a single target. But to be honest, like any type of single target, especially on heroic, is pretty like negligible in this phase. This is the very easy phase. There's not much going on. As you can see, there's the ballistas on the side. You basically push the ballistas to shoot the ships. You're dodging her frontal. You're dodging the fire explosions on the ground. You're basically using the fire to get out of the when she does the ice ring, you get out of the ice ring, and then you plant in a fire patch, so when she freezes you all, you're immediately broken, and then you take out avalanche to either the front of the boat or the back of the boat when you get it. So this is a pretty easy phase. It doesn't really matter how much damage you're pumping into the boss here. This is all kind of just like gonna help your parse in a sense, like but yeah, we mind control them off the start. If they're not mind controlled, you just want to open with a multi shot essentially, and then obviously get into your rotation as normal, and just keep beast cleave up until they're dead. You can put crows on one of them, and then if one of them dies way before the other one, throw crows on the other one, and then throw it on Jaina. But if not, don't worry about it too much. These are targets where you're going to be able to crows them off the bat, and they're gonna die almost surely. So yeah, like don't worry about your crows not coming back up. In most cases, I also feel like even on a fight like Rosticon, where there's gonna be ads, and you theoretically could get your crows back, you're actually missing so much damage not having your crows up with your cooldowns and your pot and everything. So I feel like in most cases it's worth it to just throw the crows up, even if you're not gonna get a like a refresh of it. You know what I mean? So just a little bit of information about crows there. But yeah, so we're just going to pull the boss. They're going to mind control this off the pull. I think you still get bombs sometimes. It's just like a RNG thing. I don't know if they fixed that. It seems like we didn't get any bombs here. But basically those ads will put bombs up. So I get avalanche here. I'm going to just run it. I see there's another guy with avalanche in front of me. So I kind of, if you notice what I did there, is I didn't move super far distance with avalanche because you don't need to, right? It only covers a certain amount of ground, and especially on heroic, you can like tank a hit or so if you need to. So you can kind of like stutter step with it, like I was doing, and then I put turtle on the end there where I knew I was maybe going to eat a couple of them. And there's a lot of extra healing to go around in phase 1. So if you take a tick or something, it's not really the end of the world.
How?
In terms of the patches on the ground, that's the frontal right there. You have to dodge. Now, in terms of the patches. Nothing super special about them, but the idea is that you kind of want to try and envision where her ring is going to come out beforehand, because you want to have the patches outside of her ring, so you can always jump into them afterwards once the ring comes up. So this is the ring of ice, so you can see there's already patches over there. And yeah, we just get in there. As you can see, I'm holding my crows here for the reset on Bestial Wrath. You can do that if it's pretty close. I get Avalanche again. I normally, it doesn't really matter if you go front or back of the ship, but there's usually even less people in front of the ship, so unless there's somebody else that's taking it out in that direction, it's a pretty safe spot to go. I think you've seen I got frozen there. What I should be doing here is I should be getting into the fire patch because I have stacks. I'm probably going to do that at some point here. And they're probably just going to tick off. Because there's no actual way that you keep getting stacks in this phase. It's only when you get the thing that tethers you to the ground, basically. But you should just, whenever you get that, you should just run into a flame patch. It's kind of minimal either way, but there's just no reason to be taking extra damage, right? So obviously I'm waiting here for my aspect to come up, because you always want to, when this timing comes up, you want to time your aspect with your Bestial Wrath. So we're in the flame patch, we're pumping, okay, our shit gets broken out. And you want to make sure that, something to note here. So you don't want to delay your primal at all. This might be just a specific timing for me, but I think it's going to be similar for a lot of you guys. Basically, what's going to happen if you delay your primal, because like what I mean, why would you delay your primal at all, right? Well, let's say, because I think this came up like 15 seconds before primal, right? Bestial Wrath. So let's say you're just like, oh, I don't want to waste the 15 seconds, so I can probably get that back pretty quickly. Well, it's like, first of all, you're probably not going to get it back even within 25 seconds, so you're going to be like eating into primal time. Now, you would think, okay, but there's a transition coming up anyway, so that's going to eat some time into the cooldown. But the reality of the situation is that if you wait too long to pop this, Jaina's going to be too low HP. Like if she's at like 63%, I think I tried that one time. Like I tried using the Bestial Wrath on cooldown, and then I used these immediately once the Bestial Wrath came up again. I used them together, and Jaina was at like 63%, I think, or 64% when that started, and she just, like a lot of other people may be getting cooldowns back around that time too, so her HP kind of melts, and then you're left with like, I don't know, like 8 seconds, 9 seconds on your primal when she's at 60% and transitioning. You can't really do any damage, so I would just use primal, you know, make sure you get it in here. You can also notice that Jaina is lusted, and that doesn't really have many super implications or anything like that. It's just that things come out faster. So, if you're wondering what the sound is, that's just a thing I have for my one of my weak auras. Now you notice I dismissed pet there, and I'm already kind of standing in this spot pre-positioned, right? So, and I was standing there even before the transition started, basically. Now the reason for that is because sometimes on this fight, it was after like some patch they did to Jaina, like my pet I noticed would get stuck on the boat. Initially it wasn't happening at all, like I said, and then when they patched Jaina during like the race, I think, or something, which I don't even know if it was meant to affect heroic, but I started noticing I was having issues after that. And at first it was happening quite consistently, and then it wasn't really happening much at all. So I don't know if they fixed it or something, but I didn't even want to take the chance. I always just dismiss my pet because it's easy enough to resummon back. If you get over there and you realize that you do have to resummon it, it's just wasting a little bit of time. Obviously not the end of the world, but there's no really good spot to resummon it, right? Because you don't want to resummon it on the run over, and then you're losing DPS when you summon it when you're over anyway. So I always resummon it or dismiss it beforehand, and to do that optimally you want to be positioned here already towards the edge of the boat, because you actually have a cast you have to do, whereas other people, once the transition starts, they can kind of meander towards the edge of the boat there in that little brief time period where nothing's going on. You can't really afford to do that if you're hard casting the 2-second dismiss, so I just try and pre-position. Pretty minor stuff, but you know, it can save you just getting to Jaina first, stuff like this, a little bit of extra damage. So I usually just use the post haste thing, which is like disengage speed for this fight, and that's good because not only does it give you the speed for traversing this part of the encounter and just, you know, traversing things in general, but it also removes any type of stacks, which isn't really a huge deal normally. But let's say, for example, you're on the boat and you get the debuff that locks you down, and you get avalanche on you. So you could always call for a dispel, but sometimes people aren't, like super quick at doing things, and the damage can start ticking. You could always turtle, obviously, but then you're losing damage, and you could also be hitting people around you. So that just gives you control over. You can break your route immediately, which is always nice. And in this phase, it's really good because if you happen to get hit by one of the little the things that kind of come across the ground, you'll see them in a bit. They're like little ice things that kind of skate across the ground. If you get hit by those, it typically roots you to the ground, and you can break them with post haste. So, and the trick to doing this basically is just, if you really struggle, just take it slow. But I think it's pretty easy to do. You really want to have your camera angled kind of like behind your character. Like, you don't want to have a top-down view here. A lot of fights you do want to have a top-down view. This is not one of them. So, okay, so we find Jaina. Start going to work on her. And then basically the idea here is you want to be aware when you're coming into this phase, just as like a general point of doing this fight, is the most important thing is you start getting your broadsides out on the ordinances, because some people will have high stacks from taking incidental damage. Like, your stacks really shouldn't be that high here, but things are going to happen. And let's see, it looks like everybody in this raid has pretty low stacks. Oh wait, this person's got 16 stacks. Maybe they are hit by the ray or something, I don't know. But you basically want to break the first one, or you want to be looking to break the first one pretty quickly. So you need to at least get your broadsides on there, which are what unlock the ordnance for you to be able to DPS it. So always be looking for an ordnance when you once everything clears up and Jaina is kicked, basically. Always keep your eyes peeled for an ordnance, because a lot of this game in general, World of Warcraft, is knowing what you need to do before it happens, right? So you want to have it in your mind, like, okay, I need to get there, so that if you do get the broadside debuff, you know exactly where you're going. And if you see somebody going towards one you're already going to, you can break another one. It's not going to be a big deal even if there's overlap, because you get plenty of broadsides. You just need to make sure that one gets broken. And even if it's not actually close to the boss can be moved, so it's not the end of the world. But just be cognizant of where you're positioning things. Some people would argue it's not. As you can see, you still got avalanche in phase 2. Some people would argue it's not good to break multiple ordinances because they can get DPS down incorrectly. These are the little ice shards, by the way. You see these things right here. If these things hit you, they'll give you a fairly large amount of stacks, I believe, and root you to the ground. So they move pretty slow. The thing here is just don't be lazy. Be looking at your character, around your character. Be cognizant of where you are. If you're paying attention, and you really shouldn't be getting hit by them. If you're getting hit by them, you're basically you've been caught slacking. So you can see some people are getting tagged a little bit. I kind of sometimes like to keep a preemptive beast cleave up here, because the cost of doing it isn't really that huge. The thing is, you're not focusing on keeping it up all the time, but I noticed some people in melee had they get hit by the Hand of Frost, right? So I'm thinking their stacks might be pretty high, so they might be blocking relatively soon. So I'm just going to have the Beast Cleave automatically going, so that if the blocks come up, they're taking damage immediately. That's just the thought process there.
Try and bait Glacial Ray.
So obviously we get into the Ordnance Barrel here to reset our stacks, and you can see we have the weak aura showing our protected buff. When the tank, or my raid leader there, he's calling for a bait on the Glacial Ray, he's basically just meaning try and be facing the wall so that the ray comes into the wall and doesn't just shoot across the middle of the room. If it does do that, it's not the end of the world, but it's just better, if it goes into the wall or something like that. So typically I'll try and play towards the wall. It just depends a little bit, though. So I like staying in this barrel to the very last second.
Get out.
That one I didn't really cut super close, but save my cooldowns again. Keep in mind, you always want to be doing that to use those together.
Broadsides.
But yeah, you'll notice that you still maintain the buff after you get out of the barrel. So the idea is you want to refresh it right before the barrel explodes, so you have maximum time of not getting stacks again. It doesn't really matter so much during these earlier phases on heroic. Maybe the damage on mythic is more severe, but the idea is you're going to have a lot of barrels. But going into phase 3, it kind of matters, right? Because you don't want to have you don't want to start phase 3 with a ton of stacks. So right there, interestingly enough, I get gripped because there's Icefall coming, and they're telling us to be on the side. So this isn't like a bad play or anything, but I don't think there was really anybody else to grip, so he probably just gripped me. But as a hunter, you can easily traverse this and take like one stack with disengage, so I don't really make it like a super like important thing to do that. Like the thing is, on heroic, there's no mechanic where you have to be huddled together, so your positioning requirement is a lot. It can be a lot looser, and ideally, you don't really want a ton of people far away from Jaina, right? And that's for the purpose of if somebody gets blocked. You don't want to be DPSing an ice block out where I was. So you could kind of call it like a positioning mistake, but in reality, I have 6 stacks here, so I know I'm not going to get blocked. Even if I take a mechanic, unless it's actually Glacial Ray itself, I'm not going to get blocked, right? So I can be pretty sure, I'm going to be fine, and I was just going to disengage back over anyway, but pre-saves me the trouble, so that works. So right now we've got 2 more ordinances left. Should have Beast Cleave on this. Okay, it kind of comes up a little bit late. So I have Siegebreaker here. So I just disengage away. And I just turtle to just, because I'm going to be the closest towards it. And in this fight I feel really comfortable just with all the mechanics and stuff. I don't really feel like there's a lot that can surprise you here, so like using turtle there doesn't really bother me. In some other fights it would be a situation where turtle is almost like on a premium, so you don't want to really use it unless you're gonna like die. But in this situation I'm just like I can prevent myself from maybe getting comboed by getting hit by that and something else at the same time. I'll just turtle to be safe.
Switch.
Not
so
that one, the one in the back.
They call a switch. See, my thought on this is just like people are gonna attack the low one, so we just break the low one anyway. But they did mark this one, so a little bit of my bad there. But I just assumed like people are gonna break out this one, so it's like why don't we just break this one and this one? The reason why is because this one's closer to the wall, so that's why they want to have this one over here so that we can all be in this and reset our stacks close to the wall before going into the final phase. But you could kind of do the same thing with this one right here. It's just you'd have to run a little bit over to the wall. It wouldn't be a big deal either way. So there's a Icefall here, and I'm just kind of like getting on this side of it. You can run right through because we have the protect debuff like they're saying, so it almost really doesn't matter. And luckily, you normally wouldn't want to break these at the same time, but considering the boss's HP is quite low, we're going to be just fine here. Typically, you kind of want this going even when you're attacking the wall, right, is the idea. And then the idea is you move out on the last second, like over to here. You let it explode. You have the protected debuff for like 7 or 8 more seconds while you're already moving into Nathanos and the Water Elemental.
We're gonna need a res.
Okay, so we're DPSing down Jaina.
After the intermission, though, we don't.
So now we swap over to the wall, and I typically don't use cooldowns on this because we don't need to. This is going to be like a your mileage may vary thing. It just depends on if your raid needs CDs for this or not. It's completely dependent. So we break through here. Now typically over here our strat is you don't rush to break Nathanos out. You can get a lot of damage on the Ice Elemental. But I always start on Nathanos because if everybody has that mentality of like we're not hitting Ice Block Nathanos, then what's going to happen is his HP is not going to really start creeping down, then the Ice Wave's going to get here and everybody's going to be freaking out because breaking out Nathanos stops the Ice Wave. So now this is, instead of opting to use my cooldowns on the wall, I use them here because there's going to be two targets, right? There's Ice Block Thanos and the Tide Elemental. Um, this is a really good spot because you're always going to have uptime on the Tide Elemental because it's not going to die right away, and you're getting some like double damage with Beast Cleave and stuff on the block. So this is a really good spot to use your cooldowns. I'm not sure if I pot here. I don't think I do. You could very well pot here, and it might be worth it. The thing is, it's just going to depend on like when you're going to get your cooldowns and shit for the last phase. Like if you're planning on doing a certain timing where you get blocked, you come on a block, you get your cooldowns up, and you're going to be hitting people. You're going to be hitting people with, or you're going to be hitting into a lot of blocks basically. So you're going to be the one to break out a majority of the raid after getting blocked first. You might want to save your pot for that, but otherwise, you're free to use your pot here. I believe that's what's going to happen in this video, is that I am assigned to breaking other people. So I'm going to get frozen first, and then
Watch your back.
I'm going to be up when the majority of people get frozen.
Make sure to res.
So after this, you just you keep moving up until you kill the Ice Block Thanos. You just inch back, and the one thing you want to be careful about is you want to use crows on this guy, obviously, but he has actually kind of a lot of HP, and once you start dragging him across the room here, the DPS on him goes down quite substantially. So as you can see, like, I thought I was going to get a crow's refresh, and it looks like I probably won't here. 1.8 seconds with 300k to go, and I put that on pretty low, so keep that in mind. It looks like I'm going to get boned here. Yeah, I get boned. So yeah, you want to apply that very low, because once it looks like he's plummeting, but then once he really gets dragged across the theater of battle, like all your melee might have trouble hitting him, or your casters really, I guess. So yeah, it's kind of an issue. So you're just dodging the arcane shit, and then typically you want to be near a wall. I'm just kind of like pre-positioning for Orb of Frost here because I'm one of the soakers. Typically I'll have people designated soak this. This is like super easy to soak. You don't need to use a cooldown at all to soak this. Your raid leader might tell you to use a cooldown, but it's probably just because he's telling you what he's heard, and he hasn't really obviously experienced the damage because he hasn't played through the fight as a, your character. But you can see here the damage that comes out from this is very minimal. It's not really hard at all if you have any type of hots on you or anything like that. So, and it gets eaten really quick there. So this is pretty standard. As you can see, I'm at like 15 or 17 stacks after doing the soak, and didn't really get hit by much going into this. Obviously, you want to keep your Beast Cleave up here. Just exilling there. Basically kill the first image, and so I'm noticing I'm pretty high up on stacks, right? So my plan here is to get frozen, and this is part of the overall strategy as well. Is because I soak the orb, I'm going to have more stacks, and then these people are getting frozen, I'm breaking them out, but I want to get frozen relatively soon. Now, how do you get frozen in phase 3? So what you don't want to do is you don't want to tank the channel that she does, because the channel itself will just destroy you. It'll freeze you, but then it will just truck you down unless you're getting heals bombed on you. So what you want to do is you want to wait for her to channel and then step in the ground afterwards. Now I think in this particular case,
Keep hell up.
I don't even end up needing to do that because I just start ticking stacks. You also have to be careful, because what you want to do when you're frozen, or when you're about to be getting frozen, is to get in close to the boss, but typically there's a lot of other ice blocks close to the boss, and what happens is she summons the ice spears to basically try and execute the ice block. So what's going on is those spears are going to fire, so you have to be you have to be cognizant of where the spears are around her. As you can see, I backed out for like a little bit, and I'm going to come back in now, and see, she's doing her thing now, and as you can see, there's a line that gets created here. So if I didn't freeze right here from the last tick, I would just hop in here and I would instantly freeze. The thing you have to keep in mind is that you can't be, I think you have to be below like 50% health to be frozen or something like that. There's some health threshold. You can't be super high health. So I get frozen. This is a
Yeah.
perfect situation because my cooldowns are close to coming
Very
back
lost.
up. They lust here.
Boys.
I get
Yeah,
broken out.
icicles.
I immediately, after I get broken out, there's no sense for me to be in like super melee range anymore. So I start to back up and put Beast Cleave up and just start like you know, doing some damage here. I pop both my cooldowns. The thing is coming behind us. It actually like kind of got a little bit stray there. As you can see, it didn't come out in a perfect line. It's something you have to watch out for. And like generally speaking, with Icefall, you don't want to be anywhere near it. So I was maybe cutting it a bit close there. But yeah, so now I'm just cleaving on the blocks. This is affording me like a really good damage parse basically because I was putting it into a position where you could DPS down a majority of these blocks. You're just trying to watch the icicles. They put their broadsides out. You still have Siegebreaker, which is the thing you want to take out of the raid. I got my thing back up. I think we killed the image there, right? Got another ice block.
Watch that glacial ray.
You have to be very careful of the ray in this fight because you can move if it hits you, but you have very limited time to move because it does a lot of damage and will freeze you in place very quickly. So
Gotta watch where we're facing the boss.
Break people out.
we got a Icefall. I just disengaged to get out of that.
By the ice
Just
ball.
keep putting on damage on Jaina.
The green side.
I know that I have enough stacks where I'm not going to get frozen here, so I opt to go in to soak the orb because at this point I have Exil, I have Health Pot, so I know I really don't have the right pet out here. I should have the Spirit Beast, but this got summoned because of a macro I had by accident, so I should have Survival Instinct as well. So I would have like a ton of cooldowns basically to survive this Frozen Orb, which means that the only thing that's going to kill us here is if this Frozen Orb doesn't get soaked basically. So and I also have Turtle, so my job is to just at this point secure the kill and soak the orb. And we just ignore the image, obviously.
Make sure we
Soak
soak
the
the orb. Break the tank out. Break Skull Ice Block quickly before you.
We opt to kill the ice blocks here because my raid leader made the call. Intuitively, I probably would have just kept tunneling on Jaina, but you know, 6.5% is it only goes to 5%, so it's really like 1.5%. But Jaina does have a lot of health, so just something to be cognizant of when you're trying to really rush things down.
I'm gonna freeze here.
So she's going down here.
Icicles.
I get hit by a spear at the last second from the image.
Jesus.
It's kind of caught lacking, but you know, so that is the fight.
We went on the shoulders,
And yeah,
of course.
so I think that's pretty much everything. I would say only thing there's like maybe like heroism timing is something you could talk about. So we use heroism. There's a lot of different ways you can use heroism in this fight. You can do like the super cheese that Limit did to get heroism on your raid going into phase 3, which involves basically getting people with the debuff beforehand, right? And then you have a hunter with a lust pet, and basically when you're going to kick Jaina for the second time, when you're coming out of when you're going into phase 3, when you're dragging the elemental across the room, is instead of like one hunter will deterrence and run to Jaina, and he will kick her, and then use what do you call it? Lust, like his individual lust, and that'll force her into ice block. And the idea is that your raid isn't getting lusted because they would still have sated on them. So you are the only one who didn't have sated. So you could lust, and they don't get the benefit of lust. And because she can't block more than like a couple times in 60 seconds, I think. But the idea is that the rest of the raid would be coming back in, and then right before she's about to unblock, because it's like 20 seconds on her block, they cast lust, and since she's already blocked, she can't recast block while she's in block. So you get the free lust basically, like 39 seconds on lust for almost the entire raid, except for like the one hunter that did it. Basically, I don't know if there's other classes that can do it. So that's another strategy you can do with lust, but that's for more of like a super optimization on Mythic. On this, we just use it to help break out the ice blocks essentially, and to stop some damage coming out from Jaina, because obviously she blocks when she does that. So that's pretty much the fight. And if you have any questions or anything, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and I'll try and answer them. Thanks for watching, and see